You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show and the sixth most popular podcast that originates out of Orange County, California. I am your host, Rick Franzi, and boy, do we have a good show planned for you today. Why, do you ask? Fair question. Because our guest, Hernan Ricaurte, is our guest, and he's going to be talking about Ricaurte Precision Incorporated, a family business, and his journey into it. So, Hernan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
So let's get right into it. Talk to us, take us back in time, and tell me about the original motivation that you had to join the family business in 2016.
Sure. So my father started the business in '86, so I was in high school at the time, and I had zero interest. So I got an economics degree, went to San Diego State, moved to Japan, worked for a Japanese medical device distribution company in that. And so basically focused my career on Japan. And then in 2016, my father was sort of in third gear, considering to sell the business. And that's when my sister and I looked at the business. We saw an opportunity, and that's how I got involved. So at the time, I was back in the U.S. I had two young children, but I was here 2 weeks, Tokyo 2 weeks, here 2 weeks, Tokyo 2 weeks. So it was a little bit of a hectic lifestyle at that time.
So I wasn't expecting the Japan part, so I've got to do a pit stop and ask you a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
What was the attraction to go to Japan after college?
Oh my gosh. So when I graduated from college, we were sort of in an economic downturn, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to, again, early 90s. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go to study Japanese for 2 years and come back and get a job at a multinational. And one thing led to another. It takes a little bit longer to be very proficient in Japanese than 2 years. But that was a great experience. And so, yes, I studied Japanese, and then I got to the point where I was offered an opportunity at a Japanese company, which was great. It provides you with perspective on, not only your own culture in that, but what people do outside of this country as well.
So I know we didn't prep for this question, but I have to ask, Hernan, did you bring any lessons learned back from there, or any sensibilities that you wouldn't have had if you didn't have that opportunity?
Absolutely, yeah. So my parents are Colombian, right? I was born in the U.S. and that. So a very traditional upbringing with respect for your elders and attention to detail and things like that. And there were similarities to that in Japan. But I think, yes, I think the good and bad, right? And that's the great thing about living outside of your own native country, what have you, because you have a different perspective. You appreciate what exists here in the U.S., but then you also learn and appreciate what exists and how people do things overseas. I think the attention to detail, the collaboration in a way, and I can go on and on about this, but there are extremes in Japan. They're extremely hardworking, but at the same time, and process and procedures maybe go a little bit too far, so that it sort of stymies growth, and paralysis by analysis, and no one willing to really just take the lead and make decisions and take responsibility for it does exist. Everyone moves as a team. So it shows. We've got some of the best products in the world. We've got Kaizen and like all of these systems and things that we've learned from the Japanese, or the Japanese have developed very well. But at the same time, if we could put the Japanese hardworking organization and the American ingenuity and marketing and sales component, which we're extremely good at, we would be probably leading in every industry there is. So yeah, I think there's pluses and minuses in both, and that's what we try to incorporate here at the company as well.
So my last corporate job before I became a full-blown entrepreneur, I ran a engineering company, and we had a manufacturing facility in Tijuana,
Hmm.
and it was part of a global automotive company. We
Hmm.
weren't automotive, but we were part of that, and we brought the Toyota production system into
Hmm.
what was a job shop. Frankly, it was an
Right.
aerospace parts manufacturer,
Hmm.
but just that whole process of looking for waste and looking to redesign the process. The thing that I took away from that experience the most was the value of listening to the operator,
Hmm.
understand how you can improve his or her job, and the respect to have for the person doing the work, which was really a little bit of a cultural change for us because our engineers and the manufacturing engineers, they were sort of the ones who told us how to do what to do.
Hmm.
So it was an interesting
Yeah, no, you're
aha
right.
moment for me.
Hmm.
All right, so let's talk more about you. It's not about me, is it, Hernan? This is your show. So, since taking over in 2016, have you
Hmm.
had any pivots? What have you learned about the business? What tell us about that?
Yeah, so when I came on board and sort of took over, we're sort of a little bit more than we are now, like more of a, I guess, a mom and pop, organization. We had a little over 20 people. We lacked processes, procedures, digital technologies in order to keep ourselves organized and things like that. So that's what we really pushed. We pushed, process, procedures, and accountability. And I think if anything, accountability is extremely something we now do well. Um, and that's, it helps in the development of our people, and it helps us make better decisions for new projects. It helps us more effectively implement technologies. So I would say, the accountability aspect of this type of business, again, we're in contract manufacturing, so we don't own the IP. So we have to follow what our OEM customers want based on their designs. And the other one, probably, given my position and coming into a new industry, would be vulnerability. I think. Uh, as a leader, you don't always have the right answers. So you have to learn to ask good questions, but you also have to open up and let people know you don't know and you need their input. And so that helped internally as well as externally. So it sort of forced me to step outside these four walls and get input from other business owners, business leaders that I was able to build relationships with and be a little bit vulnerable so that I can gain a little bit more insight as to how to resolve issues that we were dealing with.
So I know there are some unique challenges and opportunities with coming in and taking over a family business.
Hmm.
Um, your father ran it; he ran it successfully. He had a vision, and you're coming in with your sister with some different eyes on the business.
Yeah, so so yeah, I have one sibling. I have an older sister, and she and I, looked at the business before I got involved, but she's not involved on the day to day.
Okay.
And then my father, it's a little bit different, I think, in the sense that when I joined the organization, I was already in my 40s, and I sort of had my own career,
Hmm.
and my father was basically ready to just hand over the keys and walk away. So there wasn't really any conflict of, no, we need to do it this way or that way or whatever. He just said, yeah, just go for it, go for it, go for it. And and I felt like I was spinning my wheels. I didn't want to let him down.
Right. Right.
Um, so I was motivated there, and but yes, it's a different industry. Contract manufacturing would use precision machining, so it's a lot of blue collar employees.
Hmm.
But at the same time, whether I was in the medical device industry in Japan, so whether you're dealing with physicians, you're dealing with machine operators, they're all human, and we all have our idiosyncrasies and things like that. So what it comes down to really is the similarities and really driving process, procedures, and accountability is the same. It's just in a different industry.
So when you say contract manufacturing, I get it. Having come with my background, I understand what that is.
Mhm.
But maybe you could take us a little deeper. Uh, who do you help? What's your niche? And then describe a little bit the problem that you're. Why do they need you? Why do they choose to outsource manufacturing to you? And then of all the clients that you work with, are there a class of clients that, in your opinion, really understand how to leverage the value in your firm and are able to kind of partner in that way? Because contract manufacturing, from my perspective, is a highly partnerized relationship
Hmm.
because of what you're doing for your clients.
Right. Yeah. So our customers are OEMs, large companies in the aerospace, defense, and space industry. And so they have different departments that specialize in different areas. It could be, within the same company, you're dealing with engineers that are working on rocket engines, that are working on vehicles, that are working on, you know, uh, other flight components or what have you. So the engineering is different, the culture is slightly different, but with all of them, they own the IP, they own the design, and so we can, at the early stages and maybe the R&D stage, provide some feedback relative to the machinability or
Mhm.
manufacturability of the part, which is very, very important in a partner. But once the drawings are set in stone, we have to find a way to make these things. And so at the same time, depending on the company, some of the engineers are very experienced. Some of the engineers come from the auto industry and now we're making rockets. Some of the engineers are coming right out of school. And so uh, what we call GD&T, or geometrical dimensioning and tolerancing, the way you document drawings, there are some gray areas, and so there's quite a bit of inconsistency even from within the same company on how the engineers uh, put the drawings together. So for us, we need to be the adult in the room oftentimes. This
Mhm.
might sound bad, but
Mhm.
we need to be the professional and basically let the customer know if they're deviating from the norm, if their specifications are maybe outdated or don't comply with certain materials and things like that. So we need to be a resource to our customers so that they don't you know make problems for themselves down the line. So we what we do is we take those drawings, take those designs after sharing our input of how best to maybe design certain areas of those components in order to make it easier, more cost effective to machine, and then we have to find a way to machine those parts, but always provide our input along the way.
So, in your opinion, your experience and on, why do people choose to use a contract manufacturer instead of keeping it in house and manufacturing it in their
Yeah, it provides them with flexibility. So the components we make, we have 14,000 square feet, but we have 26 different machines that are large. We use computer programs in order to um, tell the machine what to do, and we make very, very tight tolerance parts. These companies have similar machines as well, but there's so many varying components that it's just too much for them to take the time to do the or design reviews and quality reviews and do the programs for each component and purchase tools and things like that. There's a lot that goes on, so it's a lot easier for them and cost effective to take certain components and just push them out to outside reliable contract manufacturers for them to come back to them. And then also it's bandwidth as well. There's only so much. So depending on if they're starting a project, they might need, a thousand different type of parts, within 6 to 12 months, and they just don't have the bandwidth to make all of that. So they'll use contract manufacturers, and then when they go into production, maybe they don't need as much help, and they can take a portion of that production in-house, but keep some of that production out, out in the with the contract manufacturers. So it just gives them the ability to organize and distribute their resources effectively.
Yeah, because I have to imagine with your facility, you have a pretty large investment in CNC and other equipment. So they're also saving that investment in that equipment by leveraging your infrastructure, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah. So their CapEx gets a benefit from using contract. Again, off script. Sorry to do this to you, but I'm just curious. As we talk about in this country, possibly a renaissance in manufacturing or reshoring, does that have an influence in contract manufacturing? Do you think, either specifically for you, but in your industry in general?
Man, that's a super deep question, Rick, because so my take on this is, I think a lot of people, and maybe when convenient, politicians start talking about reshoring, but economies will always drive towards efficiency,
Hmm.
right? And there are some components that may not require massive confidentiality, with regard to design and things like that. They may be easy to make. So why wouldn't we make those overseas?
Hmm.
And what US has done well is to create new designs, and create new things. So those complex components that may require a little bit more intricacy, and especially when it comes to security for defense and aerospace, those will most likely remain in the US. So I think there's a place for offshoring, and there's a
Hmm.
place for keeping manufacturing here locally.
I have to believe that people that haven't had experience in the military manufacturing process may not appreciate how serious they take security of information, and how traceability is key, and making sure their designs do not fall into the wrong hands. And
Right.
so being a trusted contract manufacturer to that industry speaks volumes, to me at least, on the surface, Hernan, for
Hmm.
the way you've built your business, and the
Hmm.
and the and the professionalism and trustability, I guess, that you have as a contract.
No, you're right. I mean, and there are a lot of requirements nowadays relative to cybersecurity. So it's huge investment and continuous process improvement and training for our team, and how we handle customers, what they call CUI, or controlled unclassified information.
Yeah, because if you believe we have enemies in this world, and possibly we do as a nation state, getting the information like what you deal with and other manufacturers for our military industrial complex is a gold mine
Hmm.
for our adversaries. Okay, I'm going to turn your attention a little bit in a different direction, which is inward a bit.
Okay.
In this role, Hernan, have you ever felt, as the boss, maybe a little isolated, or even, dare I say, lonely at the top of the organization?
Yeah, and yes, of course, and I think that's the common feeling that as business owners and leaders have, especially when you're trying to grow aggressively, right? So yeah, no, absolutely. It's a common thread, but that's where you learn,
Mm.
and that's where you realize that you need a strong team, and you need to be really good at communicating, so that you don't uh, have all of the pressure and stress on yourself, that you share the wins, you share the losses with the rest of the team, so you can have everyone on the same page as much as possible.
So, how many employees do you have?
We've got 38.
38.
Mhm.
And they're skilled technicians, I imagine,
For the
running
most part, yes.
sophisticated
Programmers,
equipment.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Quality
it's
inspectors, things like that.
yeah, and you're building tight tolerance equip parts, so that you have to. This isn't yeah.
Yes, and for us, it's we spend a lot of time going through drawings, going through specifications, documenting, like you mentioned a moment ago, traceability. We have to document every step of the process, and then we have to document every dimension, and how we measured these parts, and then get all the paperwork together as well, so that there's validity to how things were done and made. So if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. And so for us, when we start a project, it's sort of like, getting your skis ready to go down a very hairy hill, and so if you don't have your skis on tight and you haven't looked at, where you're going to go, you want to be as organized as possible, because again, if something can potentially go wrong, it will.
Yeah, I guess to keep your analogy going, you don't want to be figuring it out as you're going down the slope to some degree. You want to sort of know the path you want to take to get to the
Exactly.
bottom safely. All right, so turn you a little different direction now. Piece of business advice. Is there something, Hernan, that you picked up along the way that you can pay it forward to our audience?
I would say two things. Again, the vulnerability thing. It is true. I mean, you need to be very honest with yourself, with what you're good at and what you're not good at. And identify those weaknesses, and think about and review how you can address those, in order to strengthen your team. The other one that I was brought up to me long ago was, basically, if you're not measuring, you're not managing. And for us, we're constantly keeping score. I mean, it by keeping score, if you're doing better or not. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. It helps. It makes it fun. It makes it fun, and it helps you identify what you're doing well. What you're not doing too well. It helps you identify, what's profitable, what's not profitable, and how to allocate your resources, things like that. So wherever we can, we are automating, and we're trying to scale through technology, and when we're keeping score everywhere we can.
I love that. And that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is the technology and innovation of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
From your perspective, how do you see it influencing your industry, your company, your clients?
Huge.
Okay.
Insanely huge. And it's awesome. It's like super, it is like super exciting time, not only in what we do, but even outside manufacturing. So for us, in everything from ChatGPT and communication to prompts, developing prompts, strategies in how to manufacture. For us, in this industry, I mean, programming,
Mm.
AI is going to have huge benefits for us in being more effective and efficient in programming, and assessing what type of tools and what type of strategies we should have in manufacturing parts. Again, we use machine monitoring quite a bit here, and that helps us identify what we did well, what we didn't do well. So it's just at every turn there's an opportunity to benefit from AI.
It feels to me that AI can really thrive in companies that have a lot of data that it
Mm.
can then understand and then help you to understand. And I would think
Mhm.
in your world that you have a lot of data that you can feed it and figure out how to
T-
improve your process.
Yes, and that's a massive struggle too, because it's overwhelming. The amount of data that these machines are spitting out, it's absolutely overwhelming. So we need to be very good at prioritizing and organizing, so that we can make use of this data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay. So you said something earlier that I wrote down about growing, and you want to grow the business. And I admire that in an entrepreneur. I think that's fantastic. So that's a setup, Hernan, for you to talk to me about the vision of the future that you have for Ricaurte Precision.
So yeah, so we've been growing a little over 20% year over year last 3 years, and
Wow.
we're in that direction in 2025 as well. Um, and we don't necessarily want to grow any faster, because we want to be very deliberate and careful in how we grow. But for us, yes, making precision machining of complex parts for the aerospace, space, and defense industry has really been our focus. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're at the leading edge, or at the cusp of not only automating, but scaling through technology, and that includes digital technology. And to your point, Rick, to making better decisions with the data. So data-based, the decisions is what we want to continue doing and growing at 20% year over year, so that in 2 or 3 years we're in a position where we can potentially purchase another company or make some type of strategic decisions in our continued growth.
So again, a little bit off script, but I just had, and not a political question, but a business question. How do you see tariffs or the threat of tariffs? Does that influence your strategy?
Yes, yeah, and that's so to paraphrase Cicero, there's more lost in uncertainty than there is in bad decisions, right? There's more lost in indecisiveness, and that's what basically, from my perspective, tariffs does to us. It just creates a lot of indecisiveness because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And as a contract manufacturer, we're going to get pinched because even once the discussion of tariffs started, the prices started to increase on all of our aluminum and steel. And
Just with the conversation?
that was for the mills and some of the
Right.
distributors were just taking advantage of that.
Okay.
And so we are constantly trying to assess and analyze the effects in our costs relative to tariffs. And then that requires us to spend a lot more time in not only the analysis, but getting cash flow, preparing our cash flow, and then also having discussions with our customers relative to these changes. So it adds a ton more work for us and a ton more uncertainty for us. At the end of the day, will it bring us more work? I don't know, but I'd rather be friends, and I think tariffs as well, inflation and things like that, make one a little bit more defensive. And you're prioritize how can I protect myself as opposed to prioritizing how can I work with these different companies and groups in order to continue to collaborate and grow. So it's been tough, and additional work for us in order to deal with these tariffs.
Again, as you're answering questions, my mind's firing off a couple more. We have a little bit of time left here on the show, and I appreciate your time today. Talent, how is it for you in your niche finding the kind of people that you need to operate your infrastructure?
Not easy. So I don't think there's a lack of people, right? And I think it comes down to the educational system. I think we could do a lot better, in the high schools and also in the colleges. 4-year degree is, not for everybody, and it's okay. I think, the community colleges, and I think the colleges as well, need to shift a little bit and work with the private sector in order to have these young, talented, smart, people get exposed to different areas, in manufacturing, for example, in technology and AI and things like that are applicable. Because we've hired engineers right out of school, and it's shocking that they can't read a drawing, or they're shocked that they have to document their work in an ERP system. It's like, my gosh, how were you guys not exposed to this? But at the same time, that plus in precision machining contract manufacturing, there's probably too many companies, and it might be a controversial comment, but there are way too many companies, and it's very difficult to benefit from economies of scale when you've got 200 precision machining companies in Santa Ana alone. So there will be consolidation, things will change, but the educational system needs to do better, and the private sector needs to do better as well, because unfortunately, people sort of rot in bad cultures and in bad organizations, and that needs to change.
Yes, I think that manufacturing kind of successive generations didn't see manufacturing as a career that was like technology, let's say.
Right.
Didn't have that same cachet. But if you walk in a modern smart manufacturing place, you're going to find a heavily technology enabled facility where I think in many ways, and the jobs are well paying,
Right.
there is a potential for renaissance in that awakening that people have that, maybe manufacturing isn't what their grandfather thought of as manufacturing.
Hmm.
So,
Totally agree.
all right, my friend. Well, you nailed it. You hit it out of the park. I told you at the top of the show, people, we're going to have a good one. And Hernan, you did not disappoint. I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thoroughly.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
And I'm so glad to hear we have a manufacturing base here in beautiful Orange County. I think that's critically important. Glad to see and feature one of them here. If you're listening to the show and you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur like Hernan, or maybe you're a nonprofit leader, you would like to share your story with our audience, it's really quite simple. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I, if we're not already connected. Let me know that you'd like to be a future guest. And between Haley, our producer, who's been with us since 2016, and me, we'll be happy to get you ready and you can have an appearance on our show and tell your story. Until the next time we all have a chance to be together, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.